I want you to take a second and just bring to mind a word that universally makes people uncomfortable.
Oh, there are a lot of those. I mean, depending on who you ask.
Right, true. But I'm talking about a concept most of us spend our entire lives just actively trying to avoid thinking about, let alone actually discussing it.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, death. If you're like most people, you probably just pictured like a looming shadow or something, maybe a figure with a scythe or just this heavy, dark curtain.
It's the ultimate antagonist, really, in our culture. Think about how we even frame it in everyday language.
Like battling time.
Exactly. Battling time
Yeah.
or defeating aging. We treat this concept as the absolute opposite of living.
Like a total failure.
Yeah, something that represents a complete failure of our biology or even our willpower. I mean, we basically organize our whole society around holding it off for as absolutely long as possible.
We really do. But today, we're taking a deep dive into some excerpts from a piece of writing called The Generative Threshold of Becoming.
And I just want to say right up front, this is a fascinating text.
It really is. And the mission of our discussion today isn't to dwell on anything morbid. It is actually to unpack a proposition that completely flips that cultural script on its head.
It really challenges everything we assume.
Right. The core argument we're looking at is that we have entirely misunderstood what this concept actually is. And more importantly, that our refusal to reframe it is the exact thing keeping us stuck in our own lives.
The ideas here are just incredibly counterintuitive at first glance.
Tell me about it.
We are being invited to look at endings, and I mean all kinds of endings, from the physical to the emotional, not as a traumatic loss, but as a foundational mechanism for our own growth.
It strips away the fear.
Right, it strips away the fear and replaces it with actual utility.
I know this sounds super heavy right out of the gate, but I promise you, as we pull this apart, it becomes deeply liberating.
It really does.
To get there, though, we kind of have to start by dismantling that villain myth we've been taught. We have to look at the actual everyday mechanics of living.
And the author really doesn't mince words here.
No, they don't. They argue that this force is not a shadow waiting in the future to rob you. Instead, they define it as the pause between two heartbeats where nothing is required of you.
Or they also describe it as the exhale you don't have to remember to complete.
Wow.
Just sit with that imagery for a moment. It fundamentally changes the energy of the whole concept.
It does. A pause where nothing is required of you.
Yeah.
That stands out so much because, I mean, if you think about the average day, when do you ever feel like nothing is required of you?
Almost never. We are constantly performing.
Right. Maintaining relationships, doing our jobs, paying bills.
It's exhausting.
So the idea of ending simply being a moment where the demands finally stop is, I don't know, it's quiet, it's peaceful.
Yeah, but this isn't just poetic phrasing either.
Yeah.
The argument gets rooted firmly in basic biology.
Right. The premise is that this force has been an active participant in your life since the literal moment you were conceived.
The biological reality is just fascinating to consider. Think about the very beginning of human life.
Like a single cell.
Exactly, a single fertilized egg, a zygote. For that one cell to become an embryo, its existence as a solitary unit has to end permanently.
It has to divide.
Right, it divides. It essentially dies to its original form in order to become two cells.
Oh, wow.
Then those two must undergo the exact same process to become four, and so on. The entire mechanism of your physical growth requires constant microscopic endings.
Because if that original state didn't end, you would just remain a microscopic entity forever.
You wouldn't exist as a complex organism at all. Your body right now is just a bustling metropolis of turnover.
That's a wild way to think about it.
Well, cells are constantly finishing their life cycles, so new ones can take their place. You don't, throw a funeral for the skin cells you shed today.
No, definitely not.
Or the red blood cells that get recycled. You just accept that this microscopic letting go is the cost of having a functioning body.
So we have this biological machinery happening millions of times a day, and we don't fear it at all.
I barely even notice it.
Exactly. But then the argument bridges over into our psychological reality, and that's where things get much more difficult to swallow.
Oh, for sure. This is where the ego gets involved.
Right. The author writes that every choice we make is the death of the roads not taken. We have apparently died 1,000 times already and mistaken it for simply living.
That line is so powerful.
And we build these massive walls of habit and denial so we just don't have to look at this process.
Acknowledging that every single choice involves an ending is deeply uncomfortable for us.
Because we want to keep our options open.
Yeah. We
to
want to
them.
believe we can have it all. We want to believe that picking a path doesn't mean burning a bridge, but the reality of time and space dictates that it absolutely does.
Honestly, this is where I start to struggle with the concept a little bit.
How so?
Well, think about the anxiety so many of us feel today. We live in an era of unprecedented choice, and it has bred this intense FOMO,
Yeah.
you know, fear of missing out.
Oh, absolutely. The paradox of choice.
Right. You see it when people are paralyzed trying to pick a movie on a streaming service, let alone trying to choose a career path or decide what city to live in.
It can be overwhelming.
So if I have to reframe every single one of those daily decisions as a tiny death of alternate universes, like choosing to move to Chicago means I am actively killing the universe where I lived in New York, that sounds incredibly heavy.
It does sound intense when you put it like that.
Doesn't this framework just make the burden of decision-making infinitely worse?
It sounds like it should, yeah, but the mechanism actually works in the exact opposite direction.
Wait, really? How?
Well, the reason you feel that intense FOMO, the reason you freeze in the cereal aisle or on a dating app is because you are subconsciously fighting the reality of the choice.
Trying to avoid the ending.
Exactly. You are trying to avoid the tiny ending of those other options. You want to keep all the doors propped open because closing one feels like a failure to optimize your life.
Because if I close the door, I might be, like, locking out the perfect outcome.
But if you internalize this philosophy, you realize that closing doors isn't a failure at all. It is the basic machinery of existing.
Just like these cells dividing.
Right. You are already an expert at these micro-endings. You navigate them every time you choose coffee over tea in the morning.
Oh, I see.
When you normalize the loss, when you accept that letting go of the road not taken is just the standard cost of admission to reality, the concept loses its sting.
So it stops being a catastrophic event you have to guard against.
Yeah, it just becomes a familiar companion.
It takes the pressure off.
Yeah,
The goal isn't to avoid the loss of other options, because that's impossible anyway.
exactly.
The goal is to just let the choice happen. Oh, that helps clarify things.
It's a subtle shift, but a huge one.
It is. But it brings us to a bigger question. If these micro-endings are happening constantly, both biologically and psychologically, why are they necessary?
Why can't we just hold on to everything?
Yeah, why can't we just accumulate experiences without having to let things go?
The answer provided here centers on the danger of becoming frozen in time.
Okay, frozen in time.
The author argues that this mechanism isn't opposed to life. It is the very tool that life uses to keep from calcifying into a single shape forever.
Let's talk about that word, calcifying. It brings up such a specific, rigid image.
It really does. When a living tissue calcifies, it hardens. It basically turns to stone.
Right.
It loses all of its natural flexibility and fluidity. The argument is that human life, human consciousness, is inherently fluid.
But if we refuse to let go,
If you remove the mechanism of endings, if you refuse to let anything finish its cycle, that fluidity hardens into stone. You just get stuck.
there are some beautiful natural metaphors used in the text to illustrate this.
Yes, the seed in the tree is a great one.
Right, there's that quote about how a seed could never become a tree without an ending because it would still be insisting on being a seed.
It's such a perfect image.
The seed literally has to break apart. Its structural integrity has to be completely destroyed for the roots to push out.
It has to stop being what it was.
Exactly. If it successfully defends its identity as a hard little shell, it never grows.
And we can map that directly onto human development.
How so?
Well, a child can never become an adult if they refuse to let go of their childhood. The author points out that you have to surrender small hands and simple wanting to mature.
Small hands and simple wanting. Wow.
You have to grant permission for the old state to expire before the new state can take root.
That makes a lot of sense.
The phrase used in the text is that this letting go is the permission underneath every becoming.
That feels incredibly relevant to how we form our identities. You see people all the time who are fiercely clinging to a past version of themselves.
Oh, all the time.
I'm thinking of, like, the person who is still defining their worth by being the star high school athlete 20 years after they last played the sport.
Or someone who retires but still demands to be treated with the authority of their old job title.
Yes. Or even someone holding on to the anger from a relationship that ended a decade ago.
It's all the same mechanism.
Are we saying that holding on to who we currently are or who we used to be is actually a refusal to give ourselves permission to grow?
That is the core tragedy of calcification, yeah.
Yeah.
When you cling to a past identity, you are basically insisting on remaining a seed in a world that is asking you to become a tree.
You're just stuck in the shell.
You are occupying all of your internal emotional real estate with a version of you that has already expired.
And so there's no room for anything new.
Right. You cannot become the next iteration of yourself, a mentor, an elder, a person capable of new relationships if you are pouring all your energy into keeping a ghost alive.
So logically, this makes total sense.
On paper, yeah.
If we want to grow, we have to let the old version of ourselves end. But if this process is so natural and so necessary, why do we fight it so hard?
Because it's terrifying.
Right, but why does it feel so unnatural to let go of an identity, even one that isn't serving us anymore?
Because of the space that exists between the old identity and the new one.
The transition period.
Yeah. The author calls this mechanism the threshold keeper.
Well,
It stands firmly in the gap between a thing that was stops and a thing that will be has not yet started.
and human beings are deeply, profoundly terrified of that gap.
We hate the gray area.
We really do. It's that period where you aren't the thing you used to be, but you don't know who you are next.
We hate ambiguity. We want to swing from one vine to the next without ever having to experience the sensation of falling through the air.
That's a great way to put it.
We fear the gap because to our eyes, it looks entirely empty. It looks like a void where we have absolutely no control.
But this philosophy insists that the gap isn't empty at all.
Not at all.
They call it the generative threshold. And the metaphor shifts back to nature here, comparing this terrifying gap to planting a seed in dark soil.
The soil metaphor is really key here.
When you put a seed in the dirt, you don't panic because you can't see it anymore.
Yeah.
You don't fear the soil.
Right, you just trust the process.
You trust that the darkness is doing work you cannot witness.
It's a profound shift in perspective. It asks you to extend that exact same trust to the dark, unknown transitions in your own life.
Which is, frankly, an incredibly tall order.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult.
If you think about the listener going through a major life transition right now, maybe a divorce, a sudden layoff, moving to a new city where they know no one,
It is terrifying.
asking someone in the middle of that void to say, I am going to trust this darkness like a seed trusts the dirt, feels almost impossible.
It is hard, but the alternative presented in the text is actually much worse.
The fortress, right?
Yeah, there is a very stark warning for people who refuse to trust that generative soil. The author observes that the people who feared this threshold the most built their whole lives as fortresses against me, and still I came.
Wow.
If you are terrified of endings, you will try to build an impenetrable emotional fortress to keep them out.
But a fortress designed to block out endings is inherently a fortress against change.
Exactly.
I want to push on this idea of the fortress because the list of things it blocks out is really striking to me.
It's a very specific list.
It says a fortress against this kind of death is a fortress against change, against growth, and against love.
That last one catches a lot of people off guard.
I mean, I follow the logic on change and growth. If you are barricaded behind emotional stone walls, you can't go anywhere. You're safe, but you're stagnant.
Right.
But why love? That feels jarring to include.
Yeah.
Why does loving someone require stepping into this terrifying gap?
It comes down to what real connection actually demands of an individual. The specific wording used is that love asks you to be undone a little.
Undone. Pulling a thread on a sweater.
Think about the mechanics of deep empathy, of truly merging your life with another person's.
Okay, yeah.
If you have spent years building a perfectly self-reliant, invulnerable, calcified version of yourself, you cannot experience profound love from behind those defenses.
Because you won't let them in?
To truly let someone in, your independent ego has to soften. You have to compromise. You have to be willing to be hurt.
Your totally self-sufficient identity has to break apart a little bit.
Exactly. So the act of falling in love is, in itself, a kind of micro-death.
That is wild.
It is. You are letting the purely independent version of you expire so that a connected version of you can be born.
And if you refuse?
If you refuse to let your ego die even a fraction, you simply cannot experience real connection. You can stay perfectly safe in your fortress, completely protected from the pain of endings.
But you will be entirely alone.
Right. You are walled off from your own capacity to become something greater than yourself.
That is a staggering way to frame relationships.
It really reframes vulnerability.
Yet the vulnerability we fear isn't just about getting hurt. It's the literal fear of letting our guarded self die.
Precisely.
So, assuming someone is listening to this and recognizing their own fortresses, they realize they've been calcifying.
It's a tough realization.
If they decide to dismantle those walls and step into that dark, generative soil, what does that actually feel like in everyday life?
That's the practical question, isn't it?
Yeah, how does it change the day-to-day experience of moving through the world?
The author provides a brilliant musical metaphor to explain this lived
Oh,
experience.
the rhythm section.
Yes, they describe this mechanism not as the enemy of the song, but as its rhythm section. It's the low, steady drum beat underneath the melody that keeps time.
Keeping time so the song can actually go somewhere. I love that imagery.
It's beautiful.
Especially if you contrast it with how we usually try to live. Think about sitting at a piano and playing a single, beautiful, majestic chord.
It sounds perfect in the moment.
It does. But if you hold the sustain pedal down indefinitely and just let that one chord ring out forever,
Eventually, the sound decays.
exactly, it loses its resonance, it becomes a drone, and then it just becomes silence.
For a piece of music to be beautiful and complex, the notes have to end.
They have to give way to the silence so the next note can be struck.
And when you stop fighting that rhythm section in your own life, when you stop trying to hold the sustain pedal down on every single phase, every relationship, every job, you start to notice a fundamental truth.
Which is,
You realize that this mechanism was never actually taking anything away from you.
he was only ever asking you to release what had already finished its work.
Yes, and the reason it asks you to release it is so your hands are free to hold whatever comes next.
Letting go is completely reframed here.
It is no longer a robbery. It is a necessary clearing of the stage.
It makes me think about the literal physical sensation of holding your breath.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
You take this massive, wonderful inhale of air, and it feels life-giving. But if you try to hold that single inhale forever, your chest starts to tighten.
The pressure just builds and builds.
Eventually, holding on to that life-giving air actually becomes painful. You have to exhale, or you will pass out.
And the author argues that intuitively in our bodies, we already know this to be true.
We just ignore it.
Yeah, they say this is exactly why grief and relief can live in the same breath.
That is one of the most resonant observations in the entire piece, honestly.
It really hits home for a lot of people.
Think about how often human beings experience a major life ending. Maybe it's finally quitting a grueling, toxic job,
Or the peaceful passing of a sick relative after years of suffering.
or even the mutual end of a long-term relationship that had just run its course. People experience the ending, and they feel this profound, overwhelming wave of relief mixed right in with their grief.
And their immediate reaction is almost always immense guilt.
Exactly. People think, what is wrong with me? I should just be devastated. Why do I feel like a massive weight has been lifted?
It is incredibly validating for you, the listener, to hear that grief and relief are allowed to coexist naturally.
The relief doesn't mean you didn't care.
Not at all. It means you are finally exhaling after holding your breath for months or maybe even years.
When we pull all these threads together, the ultimate purpose of this threshold just becomes so clear.
The rhythm section, the micro deaths, the exhales, none of it is designed for your destruction.
It is designed for your liberation.
Recognizing that a phase, a habit, or an identity has finished its work and giving yourself permission to release it is the ultimate act of freedom.
It is the only way the symphony can move into its next movement.
It completely shifts how you view the timeline of your own life.
We've unpacked a lot of complex ideas today.
We really have.
By looking through the lens of the generative threshold of becoming, we've taken what is universally considered the ultimate villain and revealed its actual function,
We've seen that it's not a shadow waiting to steal your achievements.
but rather a necessary rhythm section. It's the biological and psychological mechanism that prevents us from calcifying into stone.
It is the only thing that frees our hands to hold the future.
It requires a radical shift in how we operate, though.
It really does. It means moving away from a life built on fear and moving toward a life built on trust.
Trusting the dark soil of transition.
Yeah, trusting the empty space in the gap and trusting that you are strong enough to be undone a little bit in order to truly connect and grow.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought experiment.
A way to apply this to your own life today.
Right. We've talked a lot about releasing what has finished its work so your hands are free. I want you to look around your physical space right now, or, mentally walk through your daily routines.
Take an inventory.
How many things in your life, maybe it's objects taking up space in your home, maybe it's habits you perform on autopilot.
Or maybe it's even relationships or resentments.
Yeah, how many of those are essentially ghosts? Things that finished their work a long time ago, but you are artificially keeping them on life support because you're afraid of the gap they would leave behind.
That is a tough question to ask yourself.
It is. But what if, starting today, you viewed letting those specific things go not as a painful loss or a personal failure, but simply as entering the necessary dark generative soil for your next season of growth.
What are you holding on to right now that is preventing you from exhaling all the way?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the things you've been taught to fear. Keep trusting the gap and remember to embrace the exhales.
Catch you next time.